PSKV coming to you live in the comfort of your home. Okay, this is Black History Month, and we going all the way to the end of Black History Month. And this here segment is about talking about me, yes, me, myself, and I. And what I'm talking about is Black history and giving my own bio, giving my own experience, my own testimony about the first time I experienced the bias, the racism, the prejudiceness as a little girl. Yes, it was terrible at that time. That was the first time I experienced it. And it stuck with me to life, to right now. And I'm going to share that experience with you, and I hope you have open ears to hear what I have to say. Not carrying any more hatred, but learning to forgive and learning to adjust, and not to be quick to open up my mouth so fast, but to think before I speak, and also to say, wait a minute, hold up, where's you coming from with this? Because that is how deep wounded I was as a child when I first experienced the color of my skin made a difference. Oh yes, the color of my skin made a difference. Oh, when I experienced this here bias, prejudice, hatred of a color of a skin, it was not on the protest line. It was not getting my head bashed in, but it was due to the fact of education. And I felt that it always been a bother to me that how can one that goes and dedicate themselves to teach and become a teacher and didn't have hatred for the color of the skin of those they teach. I remember this so clear. I was only in the second grade when I experienced this. It was like a nightmare to me because I was not expecting it. All I knew was about love. I was only between the age of 6 and 7, and all I knew was love. Love from my mother, love from my daddy, love from my grandparents. I didn't know nothing else but love. I didn't know nothing about how can people be so cruel to children. I didn't know that yet. I didn't know that yet because I thought I was in a safe place when I was in school. I thought I was in a safe place, that I had to be in school from 8 to 3 o'clock with now a teacher to educate me in the second grade. Always used to being with my mother, but now I'm with a teacher. When I first saw Miss Howard's, I didn't see a color. I didn't see a color of her skin. All I knew that this was my teacher. I was so happy. I was so excited because now I'm in school. I'm a big girl now. This is how I felt as a little girl. I'm a big girl now. And during that time, I was my mother's only child. Going to school, doing everything that my mother told me to do, and being polite at the same time. Well, let me get right down to it. Now, what happened was that my mother bought me this beautiful multicolor sweater. And when I think about that multicolored sweater, I think about Joseph, when his father, Jacob, made him a coat of many colors. And my sweater had many colors. I describe it to you. This sweater was so beautiful to me because it was bright, it was colorful. It had yellow, green, red. It had blue in it. Oh, yes. And it was little square boxes of each color like rainbows of jewels. I'm telling you, it was beautiful. And I just admired this beautiful sweater that my mother gave to me. But my mother bought this sweater especially for me for school. She bought this sweater and said, now, Carolyn, don't take this sweater off because it's cold inside of the school, which it was. And I don't want you coming home getting sick. So when you get to school, I don't want you taking this sweater off. Do not take this sweater off. Keep this sweater on because you have shorter sleeves. I want you to keep this sweater on. So I go to school with my brand new sweater on. Oh, I'm skipping, I'm hopping, I'm happy. The school was not that far from my mother's house where I grew up in. right here in Brooklyn. Oh, yes, I got to tell you the area. It was in Brooklyn, New York. So do not think that prejudice and racism was not in New York back in those days. It was heavy, it was hard, it was strong. And so now, all I had to do was cross the street, and it was just 1 block from my house. This is how far the school, only 1 block across the street, I'm at school. So now, I go into the class line up. We hangs up our coats into our little hubbies. We hang up our coat where we talk about the closet used to be directly inside of the classroom. So I hangs up my coat. I sit down into the class, but my sweater had a personality of its own. It was bright. It was beautiful. It had jewels. It was beautiful. Oh, it was the beauty of the eye, and it was an eyesore to my teacher, Miss Howard's. Oh, yes, it was an eyesore. So now Miss Howard's feels that this sweater, this brand new shoddy sweater, is causing her a problem. It's causing her a view problem. Because every time she look at me, she sees me with this beautiful, shiny, colorful sweater on. So Miss Howard said, Carolyn, take your sweater off and go and hang it up in the closet. And I replied back to Miss Howard's and I said, Miss Howard's, I cannot take my sweater off because my mother told me not to take my sweater off. She told me to keep it on, and I had to keep my sweater on. And Miss Howard said, you take that sweater off now, Carolyn, and go and hang it up. Now, I wasn't struggling. I wasn't pulling, and I was not resisting. I know what my mother told me, I was going to obey. And I said, Miss Howard, my mother told me not to take my sweater off. So now Miss Howard get frustrated. She get angry, and she get, totally frustrated. She comes to my table, with this anger, and she pulls me up out of the seat, and then she takes off my sweater and go back to her desk where there's a garbage sitting right next to her desk, and takes my sweater and put it in the garbage in front of my entire class. Now I'm shooken by it, and she said, now sit back in your seat. And she not just tell me to sit back into the seat, she just pushed me down into the seat after taking off my sweater. And I had to sit in that cold classroom for the whole, I'm telling you, as talking to you about it, just disturbed my peace right now. And I sit in that classroom from that 8 to that 3 o'clock until the bell ring. The bell ring is time for us now to get prepared. Put your books away and take your books and make sure everything is packed into your book bag. And now line up and go and get your coat. And now Miss Howard said, Carolyn, come and get your sweater out the garbage can. And I said, I will not get my sweater out of the garbage can. I will not be a garbage picker. I will not get that sweater out of the garbage can. So I resist. No matter how she told me to get that sweater out the garbage can, I refuse to take that sweater out the garbage can. So now the class is over. She got to take us on downstairs and, dismiss us. And I refuse to take the sweater out. So when I get home, my mother says, Carolyn, where is your sweater? And I have to also, before just telling you about this part, because it's one part I do not want to miss. Because right now, telling you about it, I'm leaving out a part that was very devastating to me. Because when she put my sweater in the garbage can, she made a remark. And that is why I refuse also to pick out that sweater out of the garbage can. She said she was going to send back all the African black children back to Africa. So when I get home, my mother said, Carolyn, where's your sweater? That brand new sweater that I bought you. Well, I know you didn't leave that sweater. I know you did not lose that sweater. Where is your sweater? And I said, Mommy, Miss Howard's told me to take off my sweater. And she took my sweater and put it in the garbage can. And my mother said, what? And I said, Mommy, she took my sweater and she put it in the garbage can. My mother rised up and she was frustrated. And I said, Mommy, she also told me that she's sending all the African children, all the black colored children back to Africa. And my mother rose up and she was frustrated. She went on and cooked our dinner. She went on like everything was all right. But this day, the next morning, when it was time to go to school, she didn't do the habits that she normally do. Cross me across the street and she go her way and I go mine. No, she didn't do that. She walked up there with me and walked into the school and walked into the classroom and grabbed Miss Howard and grabbed her and beat her and said, don't you ever tell my daughter you sending her back to Africa. Don't you ever touch my daughter and put your hands on her and remove a garment that I told her to keep on. The principal had to come, other teachers ran into the room, and I tell you, they was trying to pull my mother, that Selma, Alabama woman, off of this white woman. And that was the first time I ever in my life saw my mother even hit anybody, because she was defending her child. The first time I understood what racism was and why it was so frustrating to my mother to beat this woman. And I still did not understand that the words that Miss Howard said was so devastating, that it brought so much anger in my mother that she decided that I'm going to keep this calm till I get to Miss Howard. But that anger and that rage to the next morning built up so deeply that the principal had to pull her off of Miss Howard's. It was a blessing that my mother didn't get arrested. It was a blessing that charges was not caused on her. But I tell you one thing, Miss Howard's never disrespected me again. Oh yes, never disrespected me again. I thank God for my mother. And then as time went on, my mother explained to me and she taught me and about racism and about being colored and what that word means. What do it mean to be colored? That means that you is a mixed race. What it means to be colored is that white people can't stand the multiple colors that was on that sweater that you represent. And I thank God for my mother, Ruby. I thank God for her, the ruby of the diamonds and the pearls and all of that good stuff that also is in the crown of her head. Because she been crowned it to take up for her child. And I thank God for my mother who have went on home to glory. Yes, this is African. This is American. This is Native American history. And this is Black History Month. And who can I favor for Black History Month is my own mother, who I saw fight for my integrity. That was the first person I ever saw that stood up for the integrity of her family for education. And also taught me education was important and it was major. And it was worth to beating down anybody that would try to get in the way. So that was the first time I ever seen my mother beat somebody, hit somebody, and especially a white woman. But after that, I have never saw her physically hit no one. And always taught me, Carolyn, don't worry about what people got to say about you. Don't think about what people got to say about you. You got to know who you are. But I have seen the anger, fly into my mother when they put their hands on me. So I hope some other mothers, I'm not telling you to be violent. My mother was not a violent woman. She was not a woman that goes out there picking on anybody. But the rage that she had, because the state of Alabama she came from was a fighting state. A state that was fighting for the equality of the movement of the civil rights. And she knew her rights and she refused to allow anyone to abuse the rights of her generational line. I love you, Mommy, all the way from earth to glory. This is PSKV coming to you in the comfort of your home and the love. So love your children, love your daughters, love your sons. All right, now, talk to you later.